All right, it is 7 p.m. and I will call this meeting to order. Thank you everyone for being here. We've got a lot of turnout tonight that I really appreciate seeing. For anybody who didn't is participating tonight, not directly connected with our redistricting process. We did just do our first open house for the redistricting of city council maps, and we do that every 10 years. It's a great process, and we'll be holding our second open house on that process on March 23rd at Hillcrest High School from 6 to 7 p.m. And with that, I'll ask everybody to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Rory, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Councilmember Robinson. Here. Gettle.
Here.
Brown.
Here.
Sperry.
Here.
And Glover.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chief Larson, would you like to give us a unified fire report?
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. It's always a pleasure to be here. I have some really big news to share. However, since Mayor Stevenson sits on our UFA board and was part of that decision, I think it's appropriate that I probably defer that to him in his mayor's report. I'll happy to elaborate afterwards if you'd like, but pretty excited about it. Now that I got everybody in suspense, I guess I'll go on to the next issue, right? I just wanted to mention, I have just a very brief report tonight. The fire crews have started going out and visiting the elementary schools again. That's the third grade that they concentrate on every year. Station 126, I talked to Captain Ben Shear. Yesterday, they were at midbell, East Midbell Elementary. They try to go at least once a month. They'll go and eat lunch with the third grade students. They'll go to recess with them and spend some time with them. The purpose of that is try to establish trust over fear for a uniform and a badge and develop a relationship with them. They'll give safety classes in the auditorium. It's a wonderful program that the crews participate in with the third graders in the elementary schools. In fact, he mentioned that they had an incident at Hillcrest High, and some of the high school students came running up to him. We remember you guys from third grade, you know, so it's had a positive impact on them from throughout their life. So I just wanted to mention that. The other thing real quickly is all three platoons here in Midvale, their A, B, and C shifts at the stations have been putting in some drills with our neighbors in Sandy and Murray. They've been doing some fire drills together so that when there's a mutual response and crews from Sandy or Murray or other cities come in to help or we go to help them, everybody's on the same line, everything's coordinated, a coordinated effort, and they can work well together. They've done some hazmat training also. So I just wanted to quickly mention that. It's really helpful to develop that relationship with the other communities. It's beneficial to Midvale and beneficial to those communities. It's a really good thing that they've got going there. So that's it. I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, so now we are moving on to the public comments portion of the agenda. If the item that you wish to speak on is on the agenda for later this evening, you'll have time during our public hearing then. But if you wish to speak on an item not on the agenda, now is your time. Each individual will be given 3 minutes, and you can just step up to the microphone and state your name for the record.
Mayor, Council, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to speak. My name is Bruce Bollinger. I live at 462 Greenhaven Drive. I'm also the president of the Greenwood Village Homeowners Association. And what I'd like to talk about today or bring to your attention today is something that we believe is far-reaching in Midvale City. We love this city. We love to see Midvale stay the way it is. But some things have happened in our community that give us great concern. There is a plot of ground in the middle of our Horseshoe HOA that was sold about 3 years ago. It was a single family dwelling. There were several conditional use conditions that it went through, going from a single family with duplex overlay to 3 lots, then to 6 lots with duplex overlay. This piece of ground is just about a little bit over 6.6 acres. There's homes that are all the way around that. We were concerned right from the beginning about the density, some of the grade issues, some of the a lot of issues with the way that the places were being built, and to try to make sure that it was about the same as we had. That went through several processes, and it finally ended up here at the City Council on the 5th of May of 2020. At that time, we had a great deal of our association members come down again. The City Council reviewed, listened to our concerns, and there was a split vote on whether or not to approve the project the way it was. There were 2 yays, 2 nays, and the mayor, because there was an absentee councilman, the mayor went ahead and did the deciding vote and approved that project. We accepted that from the city. We understand that we went through the process. Nothing was done for a couple of years, and then just about a year ago, we received another notification of conditional use. The property had been sold to a different contractor in the meantime, who at the time he bought it contacted me and said, everything's going to stay the same. We accepted that, said, okay, the City Council's already approved that. Let's go with it. About a year after that, when we received the conditional use, it was conditional use to change the roof line from a pitched roof to flat roof. Now, what it did was we thought flat roof, well, that's kind of strange. And when we talked to him, we found out that the intent was to put patios on the tops of those flat roofs. So all of a sudden, 1-story buildings suddenly turned into 2-story buildings. 2-story buildings turned into 3-story buildings. When we came to that for that conditional use permit, the contractor did not show up. So they tabled the conditional use and said, we will get back to you later on when we can get with the contractor. A month later, the contractor and city zoning and planning met without notification to us, and zoning and planning approved his plan for these boxed units with the patio on top. The 1st of March, our board went down to zoning and planning to see what was going on, and zoning and planning at that time told us, no, he can't do that on the top, but that they would do some further checking. About 2 days ago, I received an email from zoning and planning that said, in fact, he could do the patios. Now, our concerns with that, the patios for one thing, the box units are a concern, but with the patios, all of a sudden, all these elevations go up and you've got patios on the top. We were told that nothing could be built on the top of these units, but I asked the question, who's to stop pergola, sheds, furniture, all that stuff from going off the top? There's nothing to prevent that. Here's where we're at. We believe that we were not afforded due process. due process by not being able to be notified when that zoning and planning meeting met with the contractor. The other thing that really bothers us is that zoning and planning made a change to what the city council had approved, which was something that was already a little bit, a split vote. We agreed with the pitched roof that the city council came up with, yet there were 2 members that sided with us originally. And what we're saying is, how is it that zoning and planning can change what you as a council have approved in the neighborhood? So I don't know how that happens. I don't know why that happens, but it just seems that that whole process has been, if I can say, really tainted. Now, I'd like to, all through this process, if I could, I'd like to read what your code says that we kept bringing up and up and up over and over again. It happens to be code 17721, which says, the purpose of this chapter is maintain existing predominantly single-family detached residential neighborhoods where a wide range of residential amenities are available in an environment conducive to meeting a variety of social and economic needs. A, allow for single-family development that is compatible with the existing development, and B, maintain the character of neighborhoods with compatible residential design. I submit to the council that a block house flat in our neighborhood and in the neighborhoods that surround us is nowhere near compatible with the landscape. Also with patios up on the top is not compatible with anything that we've got. So we're trying to figure out why, and we brought that up to zoning and planning several times. Zoning and planning keeps telling us, well, the contractor met all the other requirements. Well, if they met all the requirements of the code, how come this part of the code is not followed or adhered to? So the question is, what can we do? How can we seek relief? And what we're looking for is following the law. Our suggestion is that we go back to the place where everything was okay, start the conditional use process over again, and go from there. That makes it right. Right now, it's not right. Thank you very much. If there are any questions, I've got copies too of the 2 different roof lines, that being the pitched roof design and then the block design, and you can certainly see why we would be concerned if those kinds of buildings start to happen all over the city. What does Midvale City start to look like? A hodgepodge of different designs. I'm not sure that's where we want to be in our city, the Midvale. Thank you.
Hey, Bruce, and unless Nate, Lisa, if you guys know this, because I know you looked at some stuff today, knowing this was going to come up. When was the conditional use permit granted by the Planning Commission or by staff? How long ago was it?
As of 2 weeks ago, I was told by zoning and planning the building permits had not been issued yet.
Yeah, they're still reviewing the current building plans. In terms of when the approval was, I would have to ask the planning staff if they knew the exact date when that happened.
So just to clarify, not the building permit, the conditional use permit is what I was wondering.
Yeah, no.
So they haven't issued building permits yet, but
That's
I was
what
just wondering.
Yeah, that's
when
what
the conditional use permit was granted.
Yeah, I'd have to ask the planning. Adam? It was October 13th. Okay, so October 13th.
Okay. And it was, I mean, a couple of the things that I noted was, and this is, Bruce, because Bruce called me last night and we talked through some of this. So I don't know the history of how it went from the 1 to the 2 now to the 3. I mean, I'm sure when we approved it for the, the change, that made it to the 2 and then to the 3, but in that area, what is the height and the issue on being able to put, kind of a pergola or something on top there?
Yeah, so what came to the city council was the subdivision, which wasn't it was just approving the subdivision of the properties, not approving the actual design. Because this is in the single family zone with the duplex overlay, the conditional use only requires the planning commission to review that because it is an allowed use in there. They did approve of originally the sloped roof, but flat roofs are allowed in there. What they're proposing now is within the height limit. With a sloped roof, then it's the midpoint of the slope is the height limit. These buildings with the flat roof are maintaining that height limit. They're not allowed to put any structure on that roof other than structures. They're either mechanical structure or something to access the roof. But other than that, they're not allowed to build. I mean, things like furniture. I mean, you could put patio furniture there, but things like a whole nother
excuse me, if you
structure.
did that, then you would have to have a rail, a safety rail around to stop the furniture from flying or kids flying off the top. And who monitors whether or not they're putting anything else up there, like a storage shed or pergola or anything or lights? And all of a sudden we got Party Central up on top of the roof.
And that's as it goes through so it meets the code as it goes through the building permit process, then the building department evaluates whether their plans meet all the safety requirements for buildings with a flat roof.
So if the owner drags a lifetime shed up and sets it up there,
then we have code enforcement. You let us know that that's there and we send our code enforcement out and that is removed. I mean, that's the same as anything. If someone sticks a shed in their front yard that's not allowed there, then our code enforcement goes and enforces on that and has those items removed.
I would hope that the council and could see where this could go and how out of hand this whole thing could get.
I know some of us, myself included, when we see plans like this, we often say, these plans look great, but that's not to say the final product from the developer is going to look like these flashy handouts that we received. So, I empathize with you. I'm pretty sure, remembering back, I was one of the no votes for the original project.
You were a no vote.
And sometimes, you just have that kind of gut feeling that, this has the potential to take a downturn quickly. And I think that's what some of us saw at that time. My question maybe for Lisa, our city attorney, is what the process would be for a group like this association to appeal the decision of the Planning and Zoning Commission, if we have one. I know there is for some decisions that they make, but I don't know if this, because it was a conditional use, if there is an appeal process.
There is, however, it was passed back in October. And I believe that there would be 10 days to 30 days.
We were told by Planning Commission that it was 30 days, that we had to appeal a hearing that we did not get notified they were having. Now, how we appeal that hearing is beyond me.
It was a public meeting and it was publicly noticed. The notice of the public hearing portion was closed, and then the action on that item was tabled. And so but the Planning Commission meetings are noticed, properly noticed in the state website and our website of what's on the agenda of each meeting.
My understanding is that Utah law requires notification to be sent 30 days, or excuse me, for some meetings.
Mhm.
Midvale City changed where the notification was to be sent on every meeting. So that means Now, we're talking about zoning and planning.
Mhm.
So what that tells me then is that we were not afforded due process to be notified of that meeting. While we sort this out, possibly in the court system, do we do an injunction to stop the whole thing while it sits right now till we can kind of sort this out? I hate to say that kind of stuff, but I'm not seeing where we can get any kind of relief from what's going on here.
And I understand what you're saying. The only remedy, if you were to want it noticed, would be that a notice would go out, could have a public hearing, but the outcome would be the same. Because the city is prohibited from denying conditional use permits for the items that you mentioned through Utah code. And so we can't deny a project based on design standards and things like that. As long as it meets our code, we would have to allow that
So-
conditional use.
So if I understand, it met all of this, some of the code, but it did not meet the code on compatibility unless somebody said that it was compatible.
The state has prohibited municipalities from denying or not allowing on a conditional use permit for design standards, for building materials, things like that. Those aren't, that we cannot deny a conditional use permit based on compatibility alone.
Okay, we may have to pursue this just a little bit more. I bring this up because I think Midvale, as a council, you need to address this. Talking to Heidi earlier today, it sounds like we're not the first one or the first organization, or for that matter, property that has been approved one way and built completely a different way. And the city council doesn't even know what's going on. You won't see it until you drive by 7500 South and see this thing sticking out like a sore thumb in the middle of this neighborhood. Thank you very much. Any other questions?
I just want to say it's not unique to Midvale, right? It's pretty common probably with all city, local authorities. You approve something with certain standards that can be met, and they can change the plans. It worries me. I mentioned every time there's a rezone or something like that. So I hear what you're saying, but I want to make it clear that, we feel it and we worry about it. It's hard to legislate around that problem, and we're not, it's not really unique to Midvale, so I don't want you to think we're not, trying to, protect and do our best. It just
Yeah,
happens.
but I don't live someplace else. I live in Midvale and I love this community.
Right.
And I want to see it stay the beautiful community that it is. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. Lisa, I do have a follow-up question on the notice. So, 'cause I know you were saying that the open meeting was closed and then they tabled or continued. So they didn't send out notice again when the developer was there later. I mean, I get this because they didn't know when it came back, right?
Mhm.
And if they have appeal rights for 10 days, 30 days,
Mhm.
whatever it is, if they didn't know when that was, I'm thinking what we can do to protect, it may be too late in this instance. I don't know. But going forward, if there's those notice issues where you have people that come and they don't know when it comes back, how can we address that so that it's not happening months and months ago and then they
Mhm.
find out and they're already past their.
Right,
Their
the
appeal
appeal
period.
time.
Yeah.
I mean, in this instance, if you wanted to have a public hearing on it, you could notice it up and have another public hearing. I think that when the public hearing is closed, the public, because there was a public hearing on it. There's no entitlement to multiple public hearings.
Right.
So there was a complete public hearing that the public could say what they wanted to say. The fact that the action was tabled, but the contractor wasn't there. There's no inherent right in a public hearing for you to have a conversation with the contractor or the developer. And so there was, the public hearing was held and it was opened and closed. So there wasn't a requirement for another public hearing. It just went for action.
And in the second meeting, why did
And-
they open up a section for public comment again? If the public hearing had already been taken place and closed?
They have the option to do that. So I don't know what they did, but I can tell you that something wasn't approved and then built differently. This one was, there was an initial pitched roof approval, then they came back and did a flat roof approval. Both had public hearings, and the decision on the flat roof was tabled to another meeting. But that doesn't entitle the public to an additional public hearing.
We have difference of opinion. We can do that.
I
right?
understand.
And just to answer Councilman Sperry's question, this has come up a couple of times, and knowing that this can be an issue, what our practice is now is, even if we had a complete public hearing, if something is tabled, we are now noticing everything, so that we're just every time that issue comes up, we have been and will be providing notices so that never happens again. That had always been the practice that we wanted to do. We had some transition in staff, but that is what we're continuing to follow. So it shouldn't be an issue that continues to come up. We hope we've corrected that.
No, I
problem.
appreciate that. I mean, I think that, getting them here, and I think, it seems like that's what we've done from a council when we kind of table something, and then when it comes back on the agenda, it's noticed again. But if it didn't happen, or if it wasn't happening in planning and zoning, I'm glad to know that we are doing that going forward to try to avoid these types of situations. So.
And it is, and the one, I'll just say one last thing since I'm talking. The change in the legislature, it wasn't this last Utah legislative session, but it was the one before, where specifically in the land use code, the state came in and said, in single family zones, design guidelines and design requirements have to be removed from those codes. The state did that on that level because they feel like there needs to be more housing in the state, in the Salt Lake Valley. They felt that those design guidelines that a lot of cities had in there were causing housing not to be built. And we could all argue whether that's true or whether that's not. But what happened in that is they removed that. So we've been going through our code and removing all those things that say things like has to be compatible with the neighborhood, because the state just simply doesn't allow a city council or a planning commission to make a decision based on design compatibility anymore. I think from a city, we think it's unfortunate because you do want to have a certain look and feel for neighborhoods and you want to maintain that. The state simply just doesn't allow us to include that in our zoning code anymore. So unfortunately, you will continue to see different designs in different neighborhoods, because if they meet the basic single family, or in this case, single family duplex overlay, which these are duplexes, they meet the height requirements, the setback requirements. We really can't do a whole lot on design.
We were okay with the 6 units. We were okay with the height requirements.
It's the design you don't like. And
But
that's
and now that we have a patio on top
right.
of
No,
that
we
is
understand.
what is really. So we're gonna have you over the first south wind when they're having a party up there, and you can all sit there and just watch this stuff come flying over in my yard.
Block party during harvest days.
On the
right?
rooftop.
So, when did the state make that change to the land use development
I
management.
mean,
Act.
that was with the last legislative session. They had a deadline on when that had to be enacted. I can't
But
remember.
was that all part of the internal accessory dwelling unit changes that they made?
Didn't have the same design line as that, but it was part of the same
So last
legislative path.
the 2021 legislative session.
Yeah.
And this was originally, I mean, as the council, it was originally approved when?
This was improved in April of 2020.
April of 2020, and then the conditional
2020.
use was October of last year.
Yep. Thank you very much. I just have, I know I've gone way over my 3 minutes.
You got the aggregate of everybody out there, right?
I just have one more thing to say, and I appreciate the city engineer. Because when we did meet down there, we have issues with stormwater in our complex that comes from the city. The stormwater people and the engineer came out the very next day, looked at what was going on in that area, and there's already been changes being made to accommodate that. So kudos to the city engineers and the stormwater people. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much.
I'm Spencer Mears. I'm here on behalf of the board for the Midbell Museum. Got a little handout for you here. So in our last meeting, we had discussed some ways we want to try and bring attention to the historic areas of Midbell, and also try and break that barrier that Midbell's had on, the east side, the west side kind of stuff. One of the things we had talked about is coming up with a way to kind of have a walking tour and kind of stuff around the city. These examples I have on here are actually live examples. And the idea was we could work with the city to have little plaques put around on the different areas, whether it's a building or a specific location, that people could go take their phone and scan, and it brings up a little web page talking about the history of that area. Let's see. One of the kind of some stuff we were looking at is, have a history, or have lots of old photos, and had to do interviews with some of the people who've been around quite a while in Midbell. Talk about ways that the city has gotten attention, whether it's through movies or other things, and just kind of find a way to draw people into these different areas, because a lot of people know about Midbell, but they really don't know about the history, how the different things that buildings have been, and all the kind of fun stuff. If you talk with people like Bill at the museum, you can learn a lot about what's going on here in the past 110 years we've been in the city, around that time. In regards to that, with the city, of course, one of the hardest part will be buildings, because of course the city doesn't own the buildings. And so we're hoping the city could help us out with finding the owners of the buildings and seeing if they'll allow little plaques being attached to their buildings. Let's see, sorry. And then if we can get the city's help with helping promote these kinds of things, and since the city has a lot more resources than we do, of course, promoting during harvest days, the marquee signs here in front of City Hall and the park, maybe a flyer in the utility bill once in a while, mentioning it on the website and Facebook page, and of course in city council meetings while other things are being planned. So I think we're looking forward to trying, now that we got a new location for the museum, we're trying to get things built up, and hopefully during harvest days, we can, the activities there in the park, we can draw a lot of attention to that building, get people in there, be able to go through, get hopefully more volunteers to help be able to teach people about a lot of the things going on. And any questions on what we're trying to do here?
Spencer, I think it's a great idea, and as much as we can help you, I would like to do that. It sounds like a pretty inexpensive thing for the city to do to get some
really
foot
is.
traffic and, you know, even like holiday kind of scavenger hunts, which we saw, I think at the Halloween
Mhm.
celebration that we did on Main Street, there was a scavenger hunt. So
Right.
I like the idea a lot.
And people love doing fun little things. And so, and this is also a way to help bring the younger people in, because, you know, they're more used to the technology. So this is kind of a fun little thing for them to do. So anything else?
So I think this is a very interesting idea, right? I mean, when you brought it here, it made me think of, you know, Star Wars Land and Disneyland. You know, they've got the QR codes that you have to do with the app. You can spend all day just in there looking at the different things. So I like the concept. You know, one thing I'm looking at, so you're saying we'd have one kind of, you know, here on Main Street, one in the park.
Well,
Or
actually,
are you looking at all in the park?
there's a lot of variety. Like one would go on the current, you know, Midbell Arts building, because we know that's been a lot of things over the years.
Right.
One would probably go on the new fire station, since it's transitioned a lot. We'd maybe have several right on Main Street, because those buildings have transitioned a lot, and have that maybe a walking tour, because this is a nice close area. But like I said, we also want to spread it out, because, you know, the Fort Union area has a good history, and so it's not just one for a big area. We want to highlight a lot of stuff, because if we just did one for a big area, I think it'd lose people's attention. But if they had just specific to that building, the park or whatever, I think it would help keep their attention, keep them moving to different areas. And you know, hey, maybe be able to hit this area this day, but hey, next week we'll come back, we'll check out this area, kind of thing.
No, I mean, I like the concept. That's where I'm trying to figure out, you know, the distance wise.
Well,
Try to keep them engaged. I mean, because
Yeah.
I think you could even, one is getting permission from the different owners of the buildings, right? I think another one is, I was just thinking, we have so many people that are in the park for harvest days. You know, if you've got different things around where they can scan it, and you're almost doing a little tour midbell there in the park, right? And then maybe we see how successful that is and look to expand it. Maybe that's something. I thought, you know, we've got the different art projects in the Bingham Junction area, right? And the Jordan Bluffs. If we could incorporate some of those around history, you know, so I like the concept. I think how do we get that engagement, right?
yeah, and as we're hoping for help from the city, because with these codes, they just go to a website. So it's not something that's set. So we can constantly change it up and add information, you know, take something that might have been just a standalone piece and now make it part of a walking tour piece. It's very dynamic. The only thing that's really static is the plaque. But, you know, we have a lot of flexibility here. So.
All right. Nate, looks like you wanted to say something.
I was just in Tulsa, Oklahoma yesterday, and going around all the buildings there. That's exactly what they do. They would have the name of the building, and then they would have the little QR code, and you would click on that and just get more history than you could ever want on a building. But you could spend all day doing that. There were amazing buildings, and it worked good. So I mean, I think it's a really simple. It's just the content side. But if we could have the museum work on the content, we can work on getting those, you know, work with the business owners on buildings that have some sort of significance, or, you know, even some of them were about a street. Sometimes there were ones that were, you would click on it and you'd find out that a scene from a movie had been filmed there. So, I mean, when you start thinking about, you know, some of the movies that have been filmed on Main Street, I mean, that makes sense to do something like that. And I think with the QR codes, where in the past you would have to do this plaque, and how long can you get a plaque and have someone read it? The scanning just makes it so simple to do that. It's not a huge cost to the city, doesn't take up a big space on the building owner's building or wherever you put it on a piece of art. You know, if you have it on artwork, it could give more explanation about the artist, who the artist is. I think the artists would love that, to get more exposure from their artwork. So I think it has a lot of merit and something that we'd like to do in Midvale.
You said that was in Tulsa?
Yeah, that was in Tulsa. I
Okay,
just-
I'll have to look up because I didn't know other cities had it, but it doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, no,
Cool.
I think Spencer's next request for the museum board is, allocating funds for a trip to Tulsa, right?
You know,
Believe me, you don't,
Research, it's,
you don't need to go to Tulsa. I was there waiting for an airplane, not to visit
Yeah.
Tulsa, so.
I don't know if anyone's like, you know what, Tulsa, let's go there.
There you go. No, I mean, I don't know whose idea was there, yours or whoever, but I think it's great, not something I probably would have come up with, but I think you hit it right on trying to get the younger generation with their devices and get them interested in this. And I like the idea that, on the website, you can easily change things and, do it on April Fool's Day and have all kinds of, fake news about Midvale
Yeah.
on April
you can have
Fool's
a
Day.
lot of fun with it. So, yeah. So one question that did come up, is someone on the board thought that maybe Midvale makes their own signs. From the looks, I'm guessing that's not true. I didn't think it was, but someone said that. I'll ask, but I didn't think it's true because one thing we were talking about is just getting one of those basic laser engravers that we could just make the plaques anytime we want for this. Plus, then we could do nicer looking plaques in the museum because right now they're printed on cardstock and cut out and taped up there. So that's some of the directions we're going, kind of being multiple uses for stuff, and as we're continuing to improve the museum and its reach here. So.
Yeah, we don't make our own signs, right? There may be some Midvale residents that make some signage with spray paint cans, but those Chief Thomas. He'd have their information.
The county makes our signs.
And that's what I thought, because it's like for the city to have those resources, that's kind of expensive.
I would suggest, this is a new idea to me though, but, if they have some vandalism proof or easy cleaning, something like that, or if the QR codes or stickers, we could just quickly replace. My concern is gravity and maintenance, but I think it's a great idea.
Oh, totally. And the nice thing about what we're looking at, Bill, make our own, is you can buy a little anodized metal plaque for like $3. So if it got vandalized or we couldn't just clean it off, you print a new one off, slap it up, easy maintenance. So that's our biggest thing. We didn't want this to be an expense. We want it to be more, hey, let's just have fun and not worry about those kinds of things. So anything else? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Spencer.
Thank you.
Are there any other public comments? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to council reports. Councilmember Dustin Gettle.
Thanks, Mayor. In the interest of time, I'll keep my comments to about 20 minutes or so. Just joking. Also, there's still this lingering surprise that we still don't know about from Chief Larson and you. So got to get to that quickly. I just wanted to thank the city for putting together the open house today for the redistricting. It's, as far as I know, not something we've done before. So anytime we get more people, I don't know the total number of people who attended, but if it was more than one, then it was a success because we had, the more information we have readily available to the public, the better. It makes the city run smoother and it makes our process much more transparent. So thank you to the city staff who put that together. I know it took some time to do. And we have another one next week, right? So if you missed this one, you have an opportunity next Tuesday as well. That is all for me, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Brown.
Yeah, I just had a quick sort of thought question. And maybe Keith can help even answer this, but there was on Wasatch, we've had some more cut-ins. And I thought that, it had to be emergency use. We put like a moratorium on sort of cutting into our roads and they have to return it back to what it was. And on that note, what sort of generated that conversation was it, I think it was Questar or whatever they're called now, Dominion, did like 40 or 50 cuts into that small area of Wasatch. And they were supposedly going to resurface once it started to warm up.
I think this one was a sewer line.
Yeah, it's a
repair.
different one. So I'm wondering if it's also an emergency, if that'll fit there, what that timeline is. And also if we are, it's easy for them, for someone like Questar to say, when we're upset, like, yeah, we'll resurface it, but it's not really, they're not necessarily required to. So I don't know if we have sort of kept pressure on them or anything. And because today it seemed extremely bumpy, as the winter, as things sort of warm up and everything settles, it's a pretty bad road. So I don't know if we can at least maybe ask Matt, on that and figure that out. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councilmember Robinson.
I have nothing tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Glover.
Nothing, Mayor.
Councilmember Sperry.
I do have something. So I was contacted, and I'll forward an email to some of you by a business that is in the auto industry and has already been hit 3 times this year by people coming onto the property and stealing catalytic converters. And so they reached out saying, is there something we can do in getting a variance or updating the code just for security fencing on these businesses that have all these cars, and now it's costing them thousands. And I know Chief Tom, we talked about it before, that's just, one of the things happening right now that thieves are hitting that. So I'll forward that email string to, some of the city staff so you can reach out to the business and then see if there's something we can do to update the code on that.
Thank you. Okay, you really want to know the exciting news?
All right,
Okay, so
let's do
first of
this.
all, happy birthday to Councilmember Brown and Councilmember Gettle.
Thank you.
Both their birthdays
That's
were
not the
too long
surprise.
ago.
That was very exciting.
We're all gonna sing on 3. 1, 2.
Please don't.
I won't make us do that.
Who did that?
I will get there, but I'll save that for last because I'll have Chief Larson come back up. I did want to give a quick update on House Bill 440 because I talked about that 2 weeks ago. This was the homeless services amendments that Elison ran because we ended up getting another substitute on that bill after we had met on that Tuesday. So the way that came out is that midbell is still not required to flex in our family shelter, but we are no longer in the second substitute. We were fully exempted from having even the potential of hosting an overflow. In the third substitute, and that's the one that passed, we were removed from that exemption. However, part of that change is that no overflow shelter within 1 mile of an existing shelter, which is helpful. And that if any community hosts an overflow shelter within Salt Lake County, that is anyway, then you are exempt from doing so for 3 years. And then the cycle restarts. So I wanted to make sure I updated that because 2 weeks ago I had told you that we were fully exempted, and then that changed in the third substitute that passed. But the real news is that this morning, as a member of the Unified Fire Authority Board, we voted on a new UFA Fire Chief. As you may know, Chief Peterson, who's been at UFA for 5 years now, he promised UFA 5 years, and he is retiring at the end of this month. And so we today offered the position to Chief Dominic Burchett. He is currently an assistant chief. There were 3 candidates, all really qualified. There was an ad hoc committee who has been doing the interview process for a number of months now. I was not on that ad hoc committee, but this morning we all got together and made that final decision. I don't know if Chief Burchett has officially signed his contract yet as an exception, but it has been offered to him, and we expect him to sign it. But Chief Larson, did you want to come up and just talk a little bit about your experience with working with Chief Burchett?
Sure, be happy to. I've known Chief Burchett for 1.5 years, 2 years. He came in as assistant chief. I reported directly to him. I didn't know him very well, but he quickly gained my trust as a very capable leader, very honest, very forthright, very compassionate. And he let us do our job and gave us the support we needed, which to me was really important. He came up through the ranks, firefighter, paramedic, captain, division chief over the wildland division, and then assistant chief. I feel very confident that Chief Burchett is going to continue to lead UFA in the manner, in the way we've been headed for the last 5 years. And he's an exceptional administrator, I think. He'll be a very good CEO and a very good chief. He's very concerned about the well-being and welfare of the firefighters. That's really, I think, foremost on his mind. The mental health and wellness and the physical health and wellness of our firefighters is very important to him. The ad hoc committee that was made up of members of the UFA board went through a very extensive process. Last Thursday, the 3 candidates went through extensive interviews with the ad hoc committee. And then the 3 candidates gave a 30-minute presentation to all the division chiefs, the battalion chiefs, command staff. And then afterwards, the ad hoc committee came in and asked this group about the strengths and weaknesses of each of the candidates. Very extensive process. It was a very difficult decision, as the 3 candidates were very well qualified. But I'm excited for the future of UFA. Chief Burchett has the first 100-day plan when he starts. So I'm guessing that he's planning on signing the dotted line. But anyway, we're really excited. I'm really happy for him and for our organization. And I know he's going to have a lot of good support. So anyway.
Thank you, Chief. We're very excited for Chief Burchett to take on this role. As Chief Larson said, Burchett gave the committee a 100-day plan. Part of that plan is to get to know the board members, and there was a request with that to also get to know the council members. So we'll try to make sure that that gets set up so we all have an opportunity to sit down with him as he takes on his new role.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. Kyle, would you like to give the city manager report?
It's brief tonight. I have nothing to report. Thank you.
You have your opportunity here, and that's what we get. Okay, next up is our department reports. We'll hear from Glenn Kennedy with Public Works.
My report too is short, not that short, but short. Public Works is kind of in the middle of transitioning seasons. We don't know whether we're going to plow or go do some landscape in the park, but we're keeping up on that day to day, and we'll be ready for the full switch. I just wanted to mention a few employees, not yet, sorry. It's later, but it's cool, unless we want to get it all done now. Wanted to mention a few employees that have passed some certification. Lance Suafanua, I got it right. And Mike Frankovich passed their flagger certification, which is a prerequisite to traffic control technician, which is a prerequisite to traffic control supervisor. But the things they're learning there are how to set up traffic control and properly flag and keep our folks safe and keep the public safe in construction zones. So, and then Braxton Browning, Brighton Meekum, and I might have mentioned Rodrigo Garcia in the last report. I don't recall, but they all passed their water force cert with the state. They were the last to need that. So our entire water staff is now certified at the highest level with the state. So congratulations to them. They're not easy tests, and there's a lot that goes into that. And with that, if there's any questions, I don't have anything else to report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving into public hearings, I would ask for a motion to open up the public hearing for item A, consider approval of the West Main subdivision located at 7598 South Main Street in the Main Street Form-Based Code MS-FBC zone.
Mayor, I move that we open a public hearing.
Second.
Any discussion? None, all in favor?
Aye.
Yes. Okay, that motion passes. Vandeline.
Mayor and members of the City Council, I would like to
introduce this project to you. It's located almost immediately south of us here. If you can see that on the vicinity map, there are several parcels that the Plat.
Sorry.
Oh, can you not see it?
Not
Is
yet.
it not on this? On this? Let me wait for a second until it's there. So. But if you just in your minds just walk down Main Street past
go.
the senior center, then you hit Depot Street, and it's the parcels right there. There's 4 of them, and here's a street view of what we are talking about, the public notice sign. And what the developer, Mr. Beck, is proposing is to merge several parcels into one. And if you look at the plat, there's also some dedication of right-of-way that the city is going to get. So relatively simple action. At a future point in time, there'll be a site plan for development on this land. And as city staff, we have reviewed it. The Salt Lake County Surveyor's Office has reviewed it, and we've all found it to be compliant with the applicable regulations and recommend approval. The developer is also sitting in the audience if you have any questions for him.
Any questions from the council?
Probably hear from the developer just what they're planning to do.
Mr. Beck, would you like to step up to the microphone?
It's gonna do flat roofs and patios.
You might have been making that joke down here as well.
Too soon. Just a mixed-use building, probably 66 units, ground floor retail, commercial. Jeff Beck. Yeah. Any questions?
So how does this tie into our parking structures? And obviously we've reduced the parking down there. So how's this all going to work?
So it's surface parking with the tuck under design. We meet the, we have to submit the plan, but we meet the code as far as our parking requirements.
But I guess my question is, and I understand it meets it. My concern is when we did this, we were talking about putting in parking structures so that there would be enough parking actually to work. So in your mind, is there really going to be enough parking to make this work?
Yeah, I mean, I care way more than you do about if it's going to work.
Well, you ought to.
Yeah.
I see other developers that haven't, so
Yeah.
I'm just asking.
No, I mean, I think it's something that we obviously consider. I mean, I don't have a whole lot of latitude because the code has a minimum and a maximum. So it's not like I can go any more than I want to. I think the whole idea, we've been on the street for a long time. The whole idea is to create a walkable, there's always tension between too many cars and too little cars. And I think it fits the right balance. We have other places that we can park in the meantime to experiment to make sure that it works. But we're excited to do something.
Jeff, what's your timeline for this project if you're
Yeah, I mean,
at that point yet?
so we're submitting a site plan application probably the next week or so. We're pretty much there as far as getting construction drawings going, and then it's just going to be a matter of, I mean, the market's a little crazy right now with costs, but we're anxious to get something going.
I have a question for you. When we had the whole minimum maximum parking thing,
Yeah.
I thought it was weird to put a maximum. I don't actually like it very much, but I always thought, well, it wouldn't matter because everyone would put the minimum anyways, right?
Yeah.
Would you have put in more than our maximum that we have?
I mean, I think the sites, I mean, my site's pretty constrained. I like being able to make that decision myself and not be constrained to, it's a little pioneerish to have a maximum parking requirement. I'm into the philosophy of what we're trying to do, so I'm willing to test it out. But I do think making developers be constrained when they have all the risk, I think, is tough.
we have a lot of risk with parking sitting up here. I'll just say that every development ever
Yeah.
is underparked, and we hear about it.
Yeah. No, yeah.
I guess a different kind of risk.
Yep.
All right. I think we should revisit that maximum thing in the code. I don't get it. I don't like it.
Well, we do give you the choice between the minimum or the maximum.
Yeah, they just happen to be the same number.
Yeah. It was one number, right?
Yeah, and I I was part of commenting on that. I do think this is a unique area where it's worth exploring this type of, we don't want a lot of cars, but we also live in a very auto-centric and auto-dependent world, and so there's going to be a balance there.
Well, it's hard to see. I mean, just because we don't want 3 cars to a unit doesn't mean that's what we're going to get.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Unless you're going to charge a very inexpensive amount.
Yeah.
So people don't have to feel like they need 4 roommates to afford anything, which is everywhere at the moment. So I get it. Totally agree. We don't want just surface parking everywhere, but
yeah, but there's a balance.
Any idea on the ground floor retail? Are you looking at restaurants? Plural,
Yeah, I mean, that's
or-
the other thing. I mean, not a lot of, mixed use is tough, but we're really committed to making it work. We're setting up, we're putting in grease traps and shafts for venting. And so we're hoping to attract some restaurants. Yeah. I'm the guinea pig. We'll see how it goes.
Can I say something? Mayor?
yes.
I think we do Jeff has worked with us on the parking. I think he's parking, the residential there. I think having the maximum is good. I think the strategy overall for Main Street is to have these public parking nodes that are easily accessible from other streets. And I do think that works. We're going to do everything we can to stay ahead of that so that we always have enough parking for the development that's come at that time. And so we're always trying to plan when we do those parking structures that they're right before we anticipate the development coming. I think at this end, there's street parking that'll work. There's parking, for retail, there's parking here at this building. And I think it works for now, but we will continue to add parking options so that we park and we're strategic about where those park. But I think that this is good. The right of ways cut into the property that Mr. Beck has, but that has given us the ability to make Stagg Street 50-foot right of ways all the way. Our goal is all the way from Center Street up to Depot at this end. And the amount of right of way that he's allowing us to have makes that work so we could have that complete street network. Parking on those streets will be, there as well. So we are putting more in, and then the same thing along the side of Depot. That's a very constrained street, and we're getting right of way on that side of the property as well to make that street work a whole lot better. If you know that street, there's no sidewalks on it. It almost feels like an alley.
Right.
We won't make that a 50-foot right of way, but we will make that a lot more walkable and tie into all the parking options that we have. So
But
Jeff has been really accommodating and planning this development in the big picture of what we want Main Street to be. And it is hard because it, like he says, he is the guinea pig and he is kind of dependent on the city doing what it has said. But we did get the RDA money in place. That's completely in place. And the largest portion of that is to address public parking for the Main Street area. So this really is part of a comprehensive plan to redesign a Main Street in a way that functions like a really interesting Main Street. And as each little piece comes in, you'll kind of see that shape and form that strategy that we have. So we're appreciative that he's, doing things like putting in grease traps and making that where restaurants might not pencil right now, but we do want them there. They're the goal of Main Street. So really happy from a RDA and from a planning standpoint with the way this is looking. And I understand the parking needs. We're gonna stay just right ahead of it. It's an expensive task for the city and the RDA, but that's how you make main streets work, is with that.
I just don't want this place to become the overflow because, you know, as soon as it is for, you know, evening dining, it becomes then the residential overflow. Like we see that at all the other ones. And I would hate for the employees to all of a sudden be fighting parking spots or, you know, senior citizens not being able to, because we've now just committed to having some sort of overflow here. So I would not want to make this an overflow.
Yeah, and this area here has the potential for more parking. So I mean, as the street demands it, I think we'll see, you know, potentially structured park. That's what I would like to see, is structured parking up here that just facilitates the street. The worst thing in the world that you ever want is somebody to come down to Main Street, Midvale, to go to the theater and have a night at a restaurant and not be able to park, because they'll never come back again. And so that's what the RDA is set up to do, is make sure that never happens, so that it's always an accommodating place. Of course, we want, you know, less vehicle traffic, but we live in a vehicle centric world right now. We're trying the best we can to connect it to the light rail, and eventually we'll get Main Street even better tied in with the light rail stations we have, but we're going to keep it parked and we're going to make it work that way. But I get it. I get what you're saying.
I think this is a very exciting project, as I've mentioned to you in the past. So I appreciate the efforts that you've undertaken to be the guinea pig.
Yeah.
And I wish there was a better term for that.
Any other questions or comments from the council?
Thanks for asking or answering our question.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, this hearing is now open for public comment. Are there any public comments? Okay.
Mayor, I move that we close the public hearing.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor of closing the public hearing?
Aye.
Yes.
Okay, any against? That motion passes. The public hearing is closed. I would ask for a motion on item A.
Mayor, I move that we recommend approval of the final plat for the West Main subdivision located at 7598 South Main Street in the Main Street form-based code zone with the findings noted in the staff report.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, Rory, will you call roll?
Yes, Councilmember Sperry,
Aye.
Glover,
Aye.
Robinson,
Aye.
Brown,
Yes.
and Gettle.
Yes.
That passes. Okay, moving on to item B. I'll ask for a motion to open the public hearing on item B. Consider a rezone request from Jake Tate representing Anderson, Wallen and Associates for property located at 1122 East Fort Union Boulevard from regional commercial RC to regional commercial residential overlay RCRO to allow for a proposed 5-story apartment building with structured parking and street level retail.
Mayor, I motion we open the public hearing.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Any against? Okay, that passes. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Okay, so this is a rezone request over in the shops at Fort Union where the previous Babies R Us used to be. This is the site plan. They're currently proposing 256 units with about 5,000 square feet of retail. You'll see some of the stats up there in that top right-hand corner. They do currently have parking for 385 stalls. They are short about 57 stalls. So there's an option in the development agreement that accompanied the project tonight to get a shared parking agreement for that, or for the developer to voluntarily reduce the units until they're able to self-park the project. Here are some of the conceptual images. So the site plan here, some other concept images for what the project might look like. This is that podium parking on the first level and how it might look from a pedestrian view. We've seen a couple reasons recently, so hopefully this criteria looks fairly familiar, but Midvale City Code does outline that a project does need to meet at least one of these criteria that was outlined in the code. In our staff review, we found that it met number 1 and 3, that it does provide for a community need, and the area has changed enough, and it's in the public interest to encourage redevelopment of the area. The general plan has called out this property as being in the Fort Union Opportunity Area and also lists some land use goals there. Staff found that it met 1, 3, and 4 of these goals, that it does incorporate some mixed use with adding residential into a primarily commercial space. It would bring in that residential body to strengthen the commercial use there, and also serves as a more pedestrian walkable center. On top of that, the residential overlay section of the code also lists criteria that it wants projects to meet in order to get that rezone. Those are listed before you. And again, staff finds that this project does meet these, that it helps to utilize existing parcels that are currently sitting vacant and underdeveloped, and will help to provide greater compatibility, again, bring in more urban development. The Planning Commission did recommend approval of this project with a condition that a development agreement accompany it, which has been included in your packet, and staff's recommendation of approval is has remained the same as included in the motion as well.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from council? Okay, seeing none, this item is now open for public comment. Is there anybody from the audience who'd like to speak to this? Of course, yeah, you can come up. Just please state your name for the record.
Good evening. My name is Stephen Usdan, and I'm the managing partner of CCA Acquisition Company, which is the managing partner of Fort Union Shopping Center, which acquired the shopping center in early 2018. Since that time, we've leased over 100,000 square feet between releasing the old Zurchers and releasing the old Gordmans and releasing various spaces. We've probably had the opportunity to renew virtually all of the tenants who've been in the center. Walmart extended for 5 years. We've just negotiated a new 10-year Smith's renewal. And, you know, when it came to DSW, a retailer that I was curious what would their future hold. And we have a waiting list of retail tenants who would take their place. DSW chose to extend and renew. And I say that because we've been very mindful about keeping or about maintaining and increasing the level of the retailers at Fort Union Shopping Center. So when we had one restaurant doing $500,000 a year in sales and could replace it with a restaurant doing $1.5 million in sales, we chose to replace it with a restaurant doing $1.5 million in sales and to relocate that restaurant doing $500,000 a year in sales to another location. And we've worked very, very hard. And as you've seen, sales taxes and sales have continued to increase. We've worked hard to get some of the retailers on the waiting list to locate in the former Bed Bath & Beyond, and for that matter, in the former Babies R Us. And over the period of time that we've owned the property, we've been unable to do that. So while we've worked and we've invested in improving the access of the shopping center, and we want to continue to improve the access to the shopping center, we also recognize that really the middle of Fort Union Shopping Center that doesn't have street frontage just doesn't work well for your traditional mid-box retailers. So for example, we have Home Goods a concept from TJ Maxx that would love to be here. You know, I've tried to ask Office Max politely to leave, but they like their location. We've We have Burlington and we have TJ Maxx who wants to be here or relocate to here. But our friends or their friends at Ross, and they fight with each other. So Ross is trying to keep them out. I'm not sure if I should say that in public hearing, but I just did. And then you have Best Buy that's going to be relocating out of its location in Murray in all likelihood. So we're looking at what we can do there, and we've tried to sell them on going into the middle of the center that doesn't have the frontage, and we've not been successful. And we have excellent relationships with the retailers themselves and with the brokers. We invested in a redevelopment session with two nationally recognized firms to look at how can we re-envision the middle of Fort Union Shopping Center in a way that would add the most for the city. And Chris Butte participated in that. We looked at and how that could potentially and how that would be consistent with looking 20 and 30 years ahead to future redevelopment of the whole area. And what we came up with was a mixed use plan that would have retail on the ground floor, that would have parking in the buildings, and would have multifamily above, with all of the multifamily parked inside of the building. And when I say all of the multifamily, I mean the 1 or 2 parking spaces per bedroom. Visitor parking, if we have it on site and it's not in the building, we even will try to have that in the building. And really the only parking that should be outside is retail. And the first project the project that makes the most sense for us to start with is the Babies R Us, because it's the most unleasable for retail. I couldn't get Kids That Rip to go to Babies R Us. I tried very hard. The customer would have gone to that location. The problem wasn't the customer. The problem is that I couldn't get the retailer to go there. And it has to do with its elevation deep down in the pit. It's just a very, very tough site that really operates independent of everything else. You have a vehicular barrier between the retail and the office, which has all sorts of historical reasons for that. And as a result, there are challenges. And I really think that, we've been able to come up with lemonade from lemons in the project that we're presenting tonight. And I'm very, very proud that the Boyer Company is joining us on this project. We've had a number of developers that were interested, but I've been invested in Midvale now since early 2018. My goal is to continue to be invested in Midvale long-term. So when I knew that my retail partner will want to sell or does want to sell the retail portion of the shopping center, our company bought out the Babies, the Dick's, the Dollar Tree, the Mr. Mac, the former Bed Bath and Beyond, the former Route 21, the former and the current Kids That Rip and Aqua Tots, and the Images Salon Listman, so that we would be able to, over the next 10 years, or whatever makes sense, so that we're not overbuilding anything, that we can gradually build in a way that really complements the rest of the shopping center and continues to increase sales and be a very dynamic retail environment where we continue to enhance the quality of retailer. We're bringing Bath and Body Works into the center, replacing Elaine Bryant. And as we do that, we bring in retailers who generate higher sales. And as we bring in multifamily into the Babies, we also start to have the opportunity now to create a place that's walkable, a place that people want to come, a place where someone may want to scan a QR code, a place where somebody wants to come and eat and hang out on a patio, and just a place that someone will go to, not just to buy something that they need, but a place for an experience. And that's really what we've endeavored to do. So I'd like to introduce Ryan Simmons of the Boyer Company, who's really done who has all of the experience and has done a really incredible job to present what I think is a beautiful project and a great way to start off And just a great way to set a tone that any project that comes afterwards has to sort of meet or exceed. And I hope that you'll share that opinion.
At this point, are there any questions from the council?
I guess, and I don't know if you can answer this, but what
try.
kind of pricing on these apartments are you estimating?
Brian, what do you want to say about pricing on these apartments? I would say
Market rate.
I mean, market rate pricing, and I think, market rate that we're seeing is probably $1.90 a square foot, $2 a square foot right now. Obviously, in 3 years from now,
Could be different.
my crystal ball isn't working. Sorry.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm trying to get this clicker to work. Should be working. I'm Ryan Simmons with the Boyer Company and don't want to take too much of your time. So I'll just field mostly questions from you. I kind of want to go back so that we can look at the project and you can get your eyes and hands on it a little bit. I spoke to each of you about 6 months ago, and it's taken us a long time to get to where we are. Based on those comments I heard, I want activation, I want retail, I want it to fit in, I want it to be parked. I actually giggled a little when Elizabeth, who's done a great job, mentioned the developer can voluntarily reduce units. Did you hear that? I don't care about parking more than you do. We all care about it. We're all partners. We want to make sure the parking ratios are right. So can I use that? Thank you. Feel free to ask questions as I talk, because what I wanted to do is point out the historic park there. We had talked early on to people about potentially relocating that park, and it turned out it was historically significant to the sons of the pioneers and the daughters of the pioneers. And what we had hoped to do was put a whole retail frontage all along there and engage the drive-in, make it feel walkable from up above. That was our grand vision. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. And if you look there, there's trees and beautiful assets that we can use and think about, but we have to recess away. And so we're back into the same tunnel vision of, hey, we're down in a pit. So we thought about what goes there. Is it a national retailer? Probably not. They're not going to accept that, but maybe it's neighborhood retail. So we kept these spaces small and neighborhoody, whether they're local businesses, whether they're local services companies, whether it's a local coffee shop. We didn't want it to be a significant portion of our revenue so that we could look local, basically, and add that flavor that doesn't totally exist in newer projects. So we're trying to engage the park in a way that people have a place to sit, come off break from the office buildings, whatever it may be, just somewhere a little bit more peaceful than a typical asphalt. So just to back up, the parking situation is that we want to be fully parked, and the code requires us to be fully parked, but it allows a cross parking agreement. As you know, there's asphalt all over this place, and we may or may not be allowed to have that cross parking agreement. If we are not, then we will reduce our units. So it's more of not a voluntary thing. It's more of, if we're not allowed to put 56 spaces on the surrounding parking lots, we'll reduce the number of units necessary in order to fully park within our structure. So that's what the development agreement mentions.
Friendly amendment. What Ryan's alluding to in terms of may not be able to is that when we set up the amended and restated CCNRs for the 60-acre or so Fort Union Shopping Center, it's very important to us that the retail work well with the multifamily, that we're complementing the retail, and that we're not doing anything that could take away from the retail. So we set up the CCNRs so that the CCNRs say that multifamily must self-park in the building. And there really isn't a distinction between the distinction I tried to make earlier between, one or two cars per unit or whatever the number is. And then you have a certain number of visitor stalls. If it relates to multifamily, it needs to be in the unit, in the building itself. And as a result, it's likely to require that we take down the number of units unless we're able to come up with some other creative solution that we just have to make sure, for the sake of the city and for the sake of the ownership of the pure retail, which is now a separate ownership. from the ownership of this redevelopment property, that the retail is not at all, that the parking on the retail is not encumbered by the multifamily.
That's a good explanation.
So you, I mean, you could amend the CCNRs though, right? If you have the approval of the other owners.
So we could, but it was one thing when I created the CCNRs before I purchased the property. Now that I purchased the property, there's a.
I'm sorry, can you make sure so that folks online
I'm
can
sorry.
hear?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, sure.
Can I just short change the answer? I know you've got
Go
a
ahead,
lot
please.
to do tonight. Yes, it's possible, but it requires the consent of many tenants. So that's why the development agreement is a range of units. If we're successful in doing that, it'll be the 256. If we're not, then we'll reduce the number of units.
I'm curious, is just the ever moving that historical building just dead in the water? Or is this designed in a way that if we could get it moved, you guys could, come in and talk about adding retail in that area, or once we're done, this is it? And
What I think is we've put our best foot forward,
Mhm.
and we've really tried to work with the county.
The county owns the parcel.
The county owns the parcel, but the county is not going to do something under threat where there are concerns expressed by the sons or the daughters of the pioneers. And we've thrown out we've met a number of times. We've thrown out various
Solutions.
proposals and solutions, and none of which were acceptable. So we developed this project to be independent. We suggested one option was to relocate the historic plaza and historic house someplace closer to where the fort was. But what could happen is that while this project is designed to be independent, we also own the Images and Listman building next door. And it's possible that Images and Listman, that we relocate those tenants and that where it says existing building immediately
Mhm.
next to the park, and combine that with the park. And then you have that outside patio, stays in front of the retail, but maybe there's something else that we can still develop. We've always, we're always open and interested in speaking, but we really expended a lot of energy. The city expended a
Right.
tremendous amount of energy. We worked together. Thank you to the city attorney who worked, and for that matter, and Nate Rockwood as well. We worked very hard, and we went to city. We spoke at the county council.
I think what you're saying is it's gone for the time being.
But
for
it could
this
be
project, but you see that there's a potential there. For the future.
it's just frustrating from my standpoint when it's not the original building. It's, there's even questions if it looks like the original building. I remember asking that question. It's like, we don't actually know. It's not in the original spot. It's not that close to it. So to be held hostage for I don't even know what the sentimental value is to something like that. Frustrates me. So I'm hoping reasonable minds from those entities will eventually say, yeah, this doesn't actually make sense in the middle of a shopping center because it's not where it was. If you could ever, sort of.
Yeah,
We're very
provide-
open to that, and we appreciate your suggestions and would love to make that happen.
You have any other questions at this time?
This might be putting the cart before the horse, so to speak, but I actually really like this project. I think this is the perfect area for this type of project. My concern is what we're gonna do to mitigate the traffic issue there. It already has quite a few.
Fantastic.
So,
fantastic.
and I'm sorry if this is ahead of where
No,
we
it's
need
not
to
at
be,
all.
but
It's not at all. It's a very appropriate time and question.
And so, the three of us have all worked right there, so we're very aware of the traffic.
I've been warned. No. I think it's a fantastic question, and I would agree
On that,
I'm
though,
sorry.
that existing one level parking, I parked for 3 years. on that
So,
road.
our residents, we don't want to design a project for residents to enter off of Fort Union Boulevard and to join the approximately 13,000 vehicles per day that enter our shopping center. Those are traffic counts for public streets. We have that in a private road and shopping center. We've designed the project and that traffic will really come from from 2 or 3 places. One is from the entrance between In-N-Out and Starbucks. One is from the entrance from, let's call it South Union. And you know, you're kind of going, I guess technically you're going east, but it's kind of north if you're looking at a site plan to enter in between Mr. Mac and Dollar Tree. And we see those as sort of the 2 primary entrances. And the other entrance that we continue to work on is creating an access point between the Cottonwood Title and Pancake House building and opening up the access to the retail there for people who can come off of the 215, not have to make the right-hand turn on Fort Union Boulevard, who can cross Fort Union Boulevard and then make the right-hand turn. You know, it's a little tricky because that is a lane that's used for loading, and but it's doable. And then with the 2 primary points being what I mentioned earlier.
So South Union Avenue is already having some issues from correct me if I'm wrong, are we already having some traffic complaints for the high school and the new building that's going right directly behind Smith's?
On 9th.
So that's already doing quite a fair share of its traffic burden.
I think that's our plea to help us go to UDOT and address that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm happy to join you to go to UDOT to address that. My
All right,
pleasure.
Let's go.
But you really do have off of Union Park Ave between the In-N-Out and the Starbucks. I think you have a lot of capacity there. And I also think that, you know, I'm not sure where, in terms of the impact the high school is having, in terms of how far that goes, in terms of, you know, and certainly, look, we have every interest in making this the easiest possible access for the residents. And again, we have every interest too in owning this project long-term. The Boyer Company wouldn't have agreed to become our partner if our plan was to build it and not own the project long-term. And we're interested in the redevelopment of other buildings. We're even still exploring, you know, how we stay involved in the retail in a way that works, given all of our other commitments. We believe that the traffic analysis that's been done addresses it, and that, you know, this will work well. Again, right now, you really don't. It really would be inconvenient for someone to use Fort Union Boulevard to access this project. It makes no sense. No one's going to want to do that. And you know, and again, with all of the parking inside of the building.
I think this is an interesting concept to put you know, residential in an area that has traditionally been dedicated to retail. I mean, I've seen it in Salt Lake City and Sugar House, areas like that, but we haven't necessarily seen that here in Midvale. So I am excited about that part of the concept. The one thing that concerns me, and it has nothing to do with, you know, the project that you guys have before us or will have before us, but just that shopping center in general. A lot of the stores, as you know, Five Below opened up recently, which was exciting for me because as someone who came from the East Coast, Five Below, you know, it's kind of like the bougie dollar store. So I went to take a friend there. It's like, you're gonna love this store, it's great, you'll never believe it. But we got there at like 7:30 and it's already closed. And, you know, and I noticed that a lot of those retail spaces there have, you know, pretty early closing hours, that Five Below being one of them. So I'm hoping with more people there, we'll see some of these businesses stay open a little bit later, because it is disappointing to, you know, have to get somewhere, you know, by 7 o'clock.
Well, coming from the East Coast, we're always, and I'm also from the East Coast, we're always frustrated when places on the West Coast close a lot earlier than we expect them to close.
Yeah.
But I will say that, as you said, as you suggested, when the people are there, the retailers will stay open. And I think by also having smaller or local retail shops as well, you know, they can decide to stay open later.
Yeah.
Five Below has to go back to Philadelphia to get approval right across from Independence Hall, more or
Yep.
less is their office,
Been there.
to get the approvals. And everything with the, I will tell you, with Smith's, with Walmart, nothing happens quickly. Even if we're working as diligently and quickly as possible.
I just think it's a great opportunity, for not only more residents to have a new exciting place to live, but I think it'll be a good experience for the retail businesses, just having that many more customers at their
Thank you.
front doors.
Any other questions for Ryan or me?
Not saying any. Thank you so much.
Thank
both for
you
your
all very,
time.
very much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, one last time. Any other public comments from the audience? Okay, saying none.
Mayor, I move that we close the public hearing.
Second. Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, I believe I heard all of your voices, so that motion passes. I'd ask for a motion on ordinance number 2022-0-08.
Mayor, based on compliance with the, sorry, let me do this again. Based on compliance with the requirements of Midvale City Municipal Code demonstrated in the application. Oh, sorry, I'm going to do this a third time. Actually, someone else. I move that we approve the rezone located at 1122 East Fort Union Boulevard with the accompanying development agreement consistent with the findings included in the summary report. Findings. Number one, the application is for a rezone to change from RC to RC/RO. Two, the subject property is on a total of 2.60 acres. Three, the rezone of the property will allow for higher density and 5,000 square feet of ground floor retail space. Four, the project complies with the rezone procedure outlined in Midvale City Code 17-3-1E. Five, the project is in line with the Midvale City General Plan and the vision for the Fort Union area. Six, the applicable review departments have reviewed the project and provided a positive recommendation. And seven, the Planning Commission has forwarded the item to the City Council with a recommendation of approval with conditions.
Second.
Thank you, Paul, for taking on the hard job of giving a second. Is there any discussion on that? Rory, will you call roll?
Yes, Councilmember Glover,
Aye.
Robinson,
Aye.
Brown,
Yes.
Gettle,
Yes.
and Sperry.
Passes. Thank you. All right, moving on to the consent agenda. Consider minutes of March 1st, 2022. Is there a motion to accept the consent agenda?
Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Rory, will you call roll?
Yes, Councilmember Robinson,
Aye.
Brown,
Yes.
Gettle,
Yes.
Sperry.
Aye.
And Glover.
Aye.
Thank you. That passes. Okay, moving on to action items. Item A, consider resolution number 2022-R-08, authorizing the mayor to sign an interlocal agreement with Sandy City, allowing Midvale City to participate with Sandy in the Union Park Avenue /1300 East Mill and Overlay project. Keith.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council, my esteemed colleagues of senior staff. My esteemed bosses on senior staff, I guess is what I should say. We have a unique opportunity to participate with Sandy City in a mill and overlay project. They approached me a few weeks ago. They want to do a project on Union Park Avenue, 1300 East, starting at the intersection of South Union and Creek Road and Union Park Avenue and heading south to High Point Parkway, which is about 80-20 south. A portion of Union Park Avenue on the west side from South Union Avenue south a few hundred feet is within our city limits, the boundary of Midvale City. I think it's a great opportunity for us to take advantage of some heavy lifting by Sandy by putting out the contract, managing the contract and doing all of that sort of thing. And we get the benefit of having the work done. I looked at the information that Sandy sent over, including the unit prices that they're estimating, where they obviously are higher than what we have been paying, which is to be expected actually at this point. The funds for this project would be paid out of our current pavement management funds. Estimated cost to us would be about $35,000. Like I said, this is a great opportunity. It allows us to take advantage of their work and gets a portion of Union Park Avenue that I know Roland Garcia has been having some issues with potholing taken care of in a timely manner. Their proposal or their timeline is to get this put out to bid, maybe even before the end of the month. They have said we would have some input on the bidding process and contractor selection, then obviously would be involved in the construction portion when they actually do the work. Timeline, they're hoping, obviously that depends a lot on the contractor and their schedule, but they're hoping to get that done as quickly as possible. So I have prepared a resolution and a suggested motion. Obviously, staff recommendation is to approve this, to allow the mayor to enter into this local agreement with Sandy City and for us to take advantage of this opportunity. If you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer.
Do we have to suspend the rules?
No,
Surprisingly, no.
It's not we're a tie, so I'm just trying to figure out what we're supposed to do.
now we discussed this a couple weeks ago. I am following the rules.
Yep. It was when you were absent.
Oh, okay.
So
I was gonna say no, if there was no tie, no suspension of the rules.
Some people may not follow the rules, but
That's not a good rule for tonight.
just so you know, I offered him a tie, but
I do have a quick question. Just the price, as far as you said, it was just a couple of 100 feet worth of our section of the road. So this price, $35,200, to me just seems high, you know, not.
our
knowing-
total area is about 16,000 square feet.
Okay,
3 lanes going from South Union Avenue to just north of that Episcopal Church.
okay. So it's not necessarily just that it's a couple 100 feet. It is
It's
also
right.
the expand. Okay, so.
Like I said, it's about 16,000 square feet total.
Yeah.
What's asphalt running now?
I have no idea, Paul. This will be the first
about
time I've seen bids for a
35,000.
while, so it'll be interesting to see what they come in at.
What comes out?
I'm hoping that the producers have some stockpile of oil somewhere, so they're not having to buy current prices.
And what's our, that maybe Lisa knows this better, but you know, just in, if something were to go wrong with the project, how do we approach that as a city, as far as like recourse for work that's done that's not to satisfaction or whatever?
I'm sure Sandy requires the same bonding and insurance requirements that we do. So the contractor would be under contract. They're going to be under contract with Sandy City for the entire project. We're going to reimburse them for
Okay,
a portion. So like I said, I'm sure Sandy City requires the same sort of bonding and guarantee requirements that we would. So we'd have to go back through them to get a contractor to do it, but they'd still be under the same obligation as if they were contracted through us.
If we said no, they would just not do our little section. Is that right?
Correct.
You said it's just half of the road?
So west half of the road, basically from the median to the, to the west southbound curb and gutter.
Any other questions or comments for Keith?
Thank you.
All right, is there a motion on this resolution?
I just have a couple of comments about this. I know it's one of those things that, you know, the cost of it is, you know, a drop in the bucket as far as our total city budget goes, but it seems to me like, you know, this part of the road wasn't on our radar screen to replace. So it seems like we're spending money that doesn't necessarily need to be spent. Again, it's a small total, but you know, those types of dollar amounts add up over time. So it's just something I wanted to say, you know, as part of our jobs to watch every single dollar that comes through and make sure that it's being spent appropriately. And I wouldn't want to make a habit of replacing roads, you know, at cost. You know, it's not like we're saving a ton of money in order to do it. We should perhaps put that money into roads that are already on our radar screen to be improved.
Any other comments, questions from council?
Well, right, because we brought that up last time, right, where we were saying kind of the plan of how far out. I mean, I get what you're saying.
I think I remember it was like in a couple of years. Yeah, was the replacement plan for that part of the street.
Can I make a comment? Okay. It may not be the most needed road that needs some maintenance, but it definitely needs some maintenance. I think that the major benefit here is just overall cost savings in getting it done. The cost from the contractor, well, if we were to do it on our own, we would have to pay all the mobilization fees, manage it ourselves. This takes a lot of burden off of city staff, which is money, and we're getting it at a reduced cost. So I think that is the benefit of doing it now. Is that fair, Keith?
Is there any way we could, like, in my mind, we're paying for some of these fixed costs or these sunk costs, right? So it seems like if we were to just do it ourselves, it'd be that cost, right? Isn't that how, if I was Sandy, that's what I would do.
The
It would be
question is,
more.
it's a small project and
If we
it
did it-
probably costs us a lot more money to do just that small project, unless we could lump it in with
Yeah,
a bunch of other
it's
stuff.
basically an economy of scale savings because we are being lumped in with a large project that Sandy's doing and getting a reduced rate.
Over the past couple of years, Roland has tried to work with our pavement management contractor to get them in to do that. And because it is such a small isolated area on such a busy road, the cost for mobilization, traffic control was just kind of outrageous, where that cost for traffic control and mobilization is now spread out over a much larger project.
I am also being told from Old Birdie that area of the road is one of the most, I guess we get the claims for pothole repairs.
Yes.
So that's a cost to the city.
And it's
Right.
always on a Mercedes or BMW.
They all are Jaguars, yes, the rim, the tire,
That's
the
Roy,
alignment.
that's you driving there with your Jaguar.
I know that that's what you said.
And I think Darren's the biggest problem for that area is that section just south of South Union Avenue tends to, for whatever reason,
So
get
once we fix
potholes.
that, we need to publicize like to people, the cities around us where they have to go and make their pothole claims. Pretty sure that don't all happen.
Okay, at this point, I will ask for a motion.
Mayor, move that we approve resolution 2022-R-08, authorizing the mayor to sign an interlocal agreement with Sandy City, allowing Midvale City to participate with Sandy in the Union Park Avenue 1300 East Mill and Overlay Project.
Second,
Okay, any discussion? Or we call roll?
yes, Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Gettle,
Yes.
Sperry,
Hi.
Glover,
Aye.
and Robinson. Aye.
That passes. Moving on to item B, consider resolution number 2022-R-09. Yep, authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with A to Z Landscaping Inc. to provide landscaping maintenance services for city-owned parks and facilities. Clint.
I didn't want to address the suspension of the rules up front, but it's coming, right? I'm sorry.
No time, no suspension.
Nobody has a tie. gonna borrow one.
But we're not asking for a
I get it.
suspension.
I
of
get
rules.
it. Okay, so our landscape contract with A to Z, who was our current contractor for landscape services on the parks and city properties, expired in December 7th. Combined contracts and extensions, I believe they've been with us about 12 years. But it's time to go out and do some RFPs and see what we can find. The process, the RFP was placed on the state procurement site on 2/15/22. There was a pre-bid mandatory meeting. We required that any potential bidders attend a meeting and answer specific questions that they may have before they provided their proposals. We gave them about a week to review that before we had the meeting. If there were any further questions, written questions that were submitted through the website, that deadline was on the 24th, and their proposals were due on the 2nd. I'm going to step back just a little bit. I owe some thank yous to the procurement officer, Susan Stengel. She was great to work with and to set things up and make sure we did it all properly. Also wanted to thank GIS. Don't know if I'll be able to show the work that they put into this this evening, but they made the RFP process and putting proposals together for the bidders much easier with the information they provided. And lastly, I would like to thank legal. We ran up against another deadline and they shuffled to get this in so that we can get a contract signed before we need the services. So proposals were due on March 2nd. Susan Stengel, the procurement officer, deleted all costs from those proposals, sent them out to the committee to review individually. We did not want costs to skew the ratings. The committee members individually reviewed those, sent it back to Susan. She compiled it. We had a meeting on the 8th where cost was included, had a discussion as a group, and made a decision. So the selection committee was created with guidance from the procurement officer. She came up with a rating schedule or a rating criteria: experience 30%, scope of work, understanding and approach 30%. That one was key. That's kind of what set the winner apart. Qualifications 20, and then pricing 20%. The committee included the following staff: procurement officer, Susan Stengel, myself, Public Works Deputy Director, Jeremy Thorne, Operations Superintendent / Parks Manager, Al Hoyne, Parks Lead Operator, Nate Day, and the Fleet and Facility Manager, Levi McNeil. We all touched this contract in different places, so it was a good group. We received proposals from 5 companies: A to Z, Brightview, Elite, Lawn Butler, and the Samara Company. As stated before, independent reviews of the proposals were conducted, minus pricing. Those individual reviews were sent to Susan to compile, and the compiled results are here before cost was included. A to Z was top, Brightview was second, and then it kind of dropped off significantly from there. After annual lump sum pricing was inserted into the formula, the ratings are as follows. A to Z was still the winner. Brightview second, Lawn Butler third, Elite fourth, and Samara fifth. I think it's good to note that A to Z was ranked first before and after pricing, and that was due really to the detailed approach to understanding to the scope. A lot of the other bidders just bypassed that portion. So
Glenn, I find it interesting that the one who gives the most detail, I mean, I guess what I'm looking at is the range in the pricing. How is one 2.5 times, the other one?
To be honest, I was shocked to see the prices, especially after reviewing the proposals and not seeing the price. Lon Butler in particular was quite shocking at their price, especially after looking at the proposal, but I don't know. They're getting ahead of inflation. How about that?
Really ahead of.
Yeah.
Gonna go cut every blade of grass by hand.
Right. I don't know.
And water.
Yeah.
Yeah, but city staff has been very pleased with A to Z. I've had not as great of experiences with other landscape contractors elsewhere. And I really have been impressed with A to Z.
Is
So-
190 in line of, what the cost was in the previous?
Previously. So their original lump sum contract was around 160, but we have added properties since then.
Yeah.
So it's in line. It's in line.
So if we continue to add properties, is that in the contract to how much they can charge us?
Correct. And I didn't include the miscellaneous services costs in here simply because it wasn't a rating criteria on the proposals. But if you'd like to see them, I can
No,
show
I
you to them and
I just want
they
to make sure
jive.
that we've tied down what the
Yes, yes.
increases would be.
And decreases if we get rid of Park Strip or whatever, that is included, yes. I think my next slide, yeah, we're at the end. So are there any questions?
So you would recommend us not go with Lon Butler?
I mean, if you got the money, honey. Whoops, no, and I was actually a little bit concerned because I did like their proposal, but there was one issue that might have thrown them out, but not the price is, it's a moot point now. If there are no other questions, staff is recommending approval of this resolution and asking for a suspension of the rules. We would like to get the contract signed tomorrow. I'm under strict orders from the procurement officer that no work is to be done until a contract is signed. And A to Z would like to get out and start prepping for the spring. So that's the reason I'm asking for the suspension of rules.
Any discussion from the council on this? I'll ask for a motion.
Mayor, I move that we suspend the rules and adopt resolution number 2020. It says 2020 R26. Should it be 2022? Yeah.
Yeah, you win.
Okay. I move that we suspend the rules and adopt resolution number 2022 R26, approving the mayor to sign and enter.
It's R-
It's R09. I don't know where that came
Oh,
from.
my.
Your third
I
time
typed-
again,
Listen,
Dustin.
I typed it, so I know where it came from. I don't know why. So let's change that to 2022 R-09. Sorry, Dustin.
That's all right. Mayor, I move that we suspend the rules and adopt resolution number 2022 R-09, approving the mayor to sign and enter into a 5-year agreement with A to Z Landscaping, Inc. to provide landscape services for Midvale city-owned parks and facilities.
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion on the motion? Okay, I'll ask for a roll call vote.
Councilmember Gettle,
Yes.
Sperry,
Aye.
Glover,
Aye.
Robinson. Aye. And Brown.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That passes. Moving on to item C, consideration of resolution number 2022 R-10, establishing a Harvest Days Festival Committee and adopting committee bylaws. If our city manager, Matt Dahl's online, if for those who don't know, he's been sick. So I told him he shouldn't attend, but here he is.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Good evening. I couldn't stay away though, because I knew Glenn would say what he said earlier about the money honey thing, and just can't let him be alone. Anyway, thank you. Yeah, I'm feeling a little under the weather, but I wanted to make sure that I had an opportunity to talk about the Harvest Day item. It's a important issue, and we need to make quick action on it. And so I wanted to make sure that we had that I was able to speak with you. As you'll see as part of my presentation, that timeline for moving forward is pretty short. So I want to make sure we move forward with it. So I'm going to share a PowerPoint.
Oh,
Or not.
it was just a picture of you, Matt, that tickled all of our hearts.
Well, okay. Is it still just a picture of me? Because
Aw. Yep.
You probably didn't hear, but Chief Thomas said it's not just a picture.
well, I'll tell you what, I'm gonna stop sharing.
IT, can you put on the presentation if I send it to you? Okay. Matt, I'm gonna send the presentation over.
I guess I'm I'm removed from having done this. Are you guys just seeing me now?
Yes, we see you.
How bad were those photos? Anyway, all right. Well, I'll tell you what, even before they get on there, I'll just walk through where we're at. So as you recall, last time we discussed some of the history of harvest days and how over time there's been a lot of changes that have been made. I think a lot of people thought that you guys had a lot of sort of wisdom in some of the suggestions that you had made last time about trying to find ways that we can consolidate the harvest days, and we've really looked into that. In addition to that, there were sort of three things that we had you guys, or that we were sort of tasked with doing after that last meeting. The first one was looking at the adjacent or some of the nearby communities and how they handle some of their festivals. The other was to look at and seeing if there was any private event management companies that could help out with an event like Harvest Days. And then the third thing was to come up with a plan for the Harvest Days committee. In the first regard, what we found in the research that we did with the adjacent communities is that while there still are some communities that have a highly engaged volunteer committee with regards to their major annual festival, many of the cities are sort of moving away from having the volunteers having a significant role in that, and are really moving towards the city having sort of primary control with that. And a lot of that just has to do with being able to find volunteers that are willing to contribute as much time as these events require. Now, again, there's some variety in one of the cities, I think it was Spanish Fork. They had a system where they would have couples that would volunteer, and when one couple came off the committee, they would have to bring on a new couple to fill that spot. I'm not recommending that. It was just sort of an interesting way of handling it. Anyway, the second thing is that we looked into was the management or finding an events manager to help us out with that. And admittedly, I was a little dubious as to whether or not we would find someone that could do it within our budget time frame and all of that. And our research did find that there are opportunities. There's even one company that is located in Midvale that in having a conversation with them, we found that the price seemed to be quite reasonable for what we're looking for, and they didn't seem to have any challenges with the time frame of getting it done. And so that created excuse me, that created an opportunity for us to create a structure for the Harvest Days committee that was included in your packet, and we think has some would be beneficial. I had made one adjustment to this slideshow, so the slide isn't here, but what we're really trying to do is create a structure wherein the city council or the mayor would select the members of the Harvest Days committee. Now I'll get into some of those details here in a second. The city council would approve the Harvest Days committee chair, and then that committee would have what we would basically refer to as sort of planning responsibilities. Then we would try to engage with one of these event managers, and they would have the sort of management roles of sort of fulfilling the planning that the Harvest Days Committee comes up with. And then sort of the third leg of that stool would be city staff that would ensure that all of our administrative requirements would be followed. So it's a little bit of a different structure than we've had in the past, but because of some of the recommendations that have been made and some of the stuff we researched, we think it would be a pretty good idea. So that's the broad framework of what we're looking at. So if we go to the next slide, oh, it is there. That's weird, because I guess that was what I was trying to come up with. If we could go now to the next one. With that and getting into some of the details here of the festival committee bylaws that we're proposing, is that first, as we look at the committee's responsibilities, they would be required to put together an event plan, and that event plan would include, if you go to the next slide. Thank you. So that would be coming up with sort of what are the goals of the event. Sorry, one thing I did miss in that is that the other thing is we're really just limiting the Harvest Days Committee's responsibilities to the Saturday of Harvest Days week. Based on the discussions that we had about consolidation, what we're looking at doing is saying that the Monday and Tuesday would be block party days. Then Wednesday is the traditional Hall of Honors Day. And then Thursday would have been bingo, but based on that last discussion, as we would look at trying to incorporate the bingo into what happens on Saturday. And then if a concert is going to occur on Friday, we're supportive of that. But that the committee itself would just be looking at the events on that Saturday. So as we look at that Saturday and the event plan, that's where they would set up, what are their goals? What would the theme of that event be? The implementation timeline of what's going on leading up to the event. They would be selecting the food trucks, the vendors, the parade participants, etc. This is in the packet, so I won't read through all of it. But they're essentially setting up the framework and sort of what the vision for the Harvest Day events would be. Then, as we spoke about before, the thought would be then is that we would hire that events manager that would work closely with the committee, and their job would be to go forward and actually work on getting the agreements and things put together with the vendors and the food trucks, and making sure we're meeting the technical needs of the performers and that kind of stuff. If you go to the next slide. So just real quick then is what we're looking at is that there would be a chair plus an additional 5 members. The thought would be that the mayor, if you approve what we're proposing tonight, the mayor would appoint all of the members, but the chair, which we'll come back to, would be the only one that the city council would actually confirm. In addition to that, the city manager would select staff members to participate on the committee, and then the city council could select up to 2 council members to participate in the committee as well. If you go to the next slide. Terms would be 1 year. There'd be no compensation. They'd be required to attend, and the mayor would have the authority to remove anyone from that committee. If you go to the next slide. Essentially the officers there would be the chair, the vice chair, and secretary. The chair, if you go to the next slide. Thank you. Would have a lot of the same responsibilities that you would expect. Setting the meeting times, coordinating with the city recorder, because this would be considered a city committee and therefore would have to follow our city rules for noticing events. They would convene the meetings. They'd be responsible for communicating regularly with the event manager and city staff. They would be responsible for providing updates to the city council on the progress of the committee, etc. If you go to the next slide. Then the vice chair, for all intents and purposes, is the thing that the vice chair is normally. They're just waiting for the chair to quit so that they can assume all of the power. If you guys could laugh a little louder for me, I'd appreciate it. I need that tonight. Anyways, they would help out the chair, and then the secretary would be responsible for maintaining those written meeting minutes and things per the requirements under our code. If you go to the next slide. So this is just some of the basic things that just remind to point out to you that this would be a city committee and it would have to follow a lot of the same noticing requirements in order for it to act. Go to the next slide. The committee would not have the authority to contractually bind or obligate the city. That's why the city staff is still required for some of the administrative work to make sure we get that to the mayor. Technically, the mayor is the only person who can bind and obligate the city. The committee will work with the events manager and staff to follow the city procurement and contracting protocols, policies, and laws. We are looking into if there's some ability to push that to the event manager as a third party, trying to keep our protections, but maybe finding a way of using them to move more quickly through some of the procurement issues with an event. The committee will comply with the fiscal and accounting controls established by me. And then the final thing is the obligation or encumbrance incurred by any member of the committee in excess of such limitations or appropriated funds, if any, shall not be an obligation of the city. If you go to the next slide. I did put in the recommended bylaws that I would have a veto over the decisions of the committee. It's not something that I would want to exercise ever or often, but it is something so that a quick decision could be made if there is a decision of the committee that could be detrimental to the community or the city. That could be from for example, potentially the selection of a entertainer that might not sort of meet our standards, or if there's a push to do some form of communication that might not meet sort of our expectations in our community for standards of marketing or something like that, that we might be able to do that. And so I put that veto authority in there. And then finally, the arrangement does reference that Midvale City shall designate an event manager who will be responsible for the implementation of the goals, plans, and decisions of the committee. We've talked about that already. This just makes sure that it's clear that while the manager will coordinate their activities with the chair, the event manager will still be as a contracted, as a contractor to the city, will be supervised by me. If you go to the next slide. So the next thing is just if you agree that this plan is something that is workable for you, what we would do is basically tomorrow we would start launch the recruitment for committee members. There would be an application that they would need to submit. We'd want those to be due by April 6th so that we could then schedule interviews with the mayor during the week of April 11th through the 15th. All right. The applicants would then, or the mayor would then appoint that week, and then we would come back to you at the April 19th city council meeting for you guys to approve the chair. There is one other provision I just wanted to mention in the resolution that we've provided, which essentially says that if come April 19th, if we don't have a committee formed, that we could essentially sort of scrap this whole plan and piece together another one to move forward, which in that case would probably, I mean, I guess it depends on what the issue is, but it would probably just mean that staff would have to take that over. So that's a quick overview of what we put together, what we're proposing. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Matt, did you put in size of the committee on this? I know that there's the 3 positions. Is it limited to those 3?
It's 5 plus the chair. Sorry, it's a max of 5 plus the chair.
Thank you.
Hey, Matt, I have a question. This is Councilmember Gettle. I hope you're feeling better, by the way.
Thank you.
I just have one question. Knowing some of these types of committees that I've served on in the past, if 3 of the 5 positions are positions of, some sort of being an officer within the committee, it might be beneficial to shorten that to allow the opportunity for it to only be 2, so that the vice chair could also be the secretary. If we had, if we just had 3 people on the committee and one of them absolutely didn't want to serve as one of the officers, then that would provide some leeway there.
I'm good with that.
And, you know, I have seen other organizations that have a vice chair / secretary or secretary treasurer or something like that. So we might want to consider that just to make sure that, you know, we have people who just want to volunteer and may not want to be an officer. You know, under this structure, they, you know, 60% of all members would be officers.
Right. That makes sense.
There was that. There's also the veto authority. I absolutely support your right to veto. I think we should also add that a majority of the city council could veto a decision like that as well.
I have no problem with that.
Okay, and that was easy.
Matt, Councilman Glover, just a question, what type of price range did you get for having somebody come in and manage it? Approximately.
We had, with sort of describing the project, but without having given a full scope, it sounds like we could get the services for around $10,000. I want to be very clear, though, that as we scope that, I'm sure that will increase some, but that is well within a range that we thought we could work with.
Thank you.
And do you think that position taking a lot of stress from city staff, not only is it a number that is within our budget, but do you think it's something that's well worth getting rid of some of that stress and anxiety?
Well, two things on that. One is, if it works, then in the best case scenario, I think it would be amazing for staff in relieving some of that stress. If, you know, I could also see a scenario where it becomes challenging because we are creating sort of these three different parties with three different responsibilities that have to sort of work together. So, you know, if we find a good professional group, I think it will be a pretty solid way to go and beneficial to us. There was a second more important point that I've lost, but I do think that it has the potential to relieve that stress on us.
Okay. That's great.
And I also appreciate that you brought this up as an idea, because I wouldn't have actually thought that it would have been very workable.
Comments or questions from Matt?
Well, thank you. So we do have the resolution, and if the two changes that I caught that were recommended that we would need to include in the motion would be to I'm sure Lisa could maybe help me out in better wording, but consolidate the vice chair and secretary positions into one position, and then to include a majority vote of the city council to veto a decision of the committee.
Is there a motion with those amendments?
Lisa, did you want to weigh in on that? Just, I don't know that you necessarily have to, but Matt mentioned your name.
No, just to make sure you add those two changes to the bylaws.
Yeah.
You're passing the motion with those changes.
And I guess before we do that, does anyone have any other council members have any thoughts on those two amendments?
I'm good to go with it just to see how it works this year.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
Then we can make it, if it works, great, wonderful. If it doesn't, then we go to do something else.
Yeah.
I like your additions. I'm trying to think of like 5 more to make you put in there just so you can, but I'll leave it out.
I mean, technically, we should vote on the amendments first and then the motion as a separate entity, but
We can do that if you'd like.
you know, we've not done that before. So I will move that we approve resolution number 2022 R10, establishing a Harvest Days Festival Committee and adopting committee bylaws with the following 2 amendments. 1. Amending the organization, section 4 organization to allow for only 2 positions to be officers instead of requiring 3. Is that good enough? Okay. And section 9 to include a majority vote of the city council as authorities to veto any and all decisions made by the committee.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion on that? Rory, will you call roll?
Yes, Councilmember Sperry,
Aye.
Glover,
Aye.
Robinson. Aye. Brown
Yes.
and Gettle.
Yes.
Thank you. That passes.
Thank you, everyone. I look forward to being there with you at the next meeting. And I've also asked that we table the discussion on the legislative update. And if you're okay with that, then I will go and cough myself to sleep. Good evening.
Mayor, I move that we table action or discussion item A, legislative wrap up.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Any against? That passes and that's tabled. Thanks, Matt. Go get some rest.
Good night,
Thank-
Matt.
Good night.
Do we need to move that Matt coughs himself to sleep?
I just turned it off.
Yeah, he's like, I'm done.
Okay, our next discussion item, discuss purchase of water meters and water department inventory.
Thank you, Mayor. This item should be fairly brief. So the Administrative Services Director and the Public Works Director have been talking with our vendors, in particular water meters, hydrants, and also other parts that the water department uses. And we're all getting warned that there are supply chain issues. If they aren't here already, they are coming very shortly. So one thing that we have thought of as staff to do is that we would order next fiscal year's inventory and water meters now. The likelihood of them actually coming in this fiscal year before June 30th is fairly slim on a lot of it. But at the same time, if we're going to make this purchase, we have to have the funds available in place in case some miracle happens and a large order is canceled and we're able to fulfill ours. So what this would involve from you as a council is, because it is a purchase over 100,000, we would come back as staff and request approval for that purchase. And then there would be a subsequent budget amendment. From a treasury standpoint, since I am the interim treasurer, the water fund does have the funds available to front these funds. We do have those American Rescue Plan Act funds we received that we have not spent yet. So we do have those funds available. And as I did put in the staff report, we will reduce next year's budget by the amount we're going to obligate this year. So overall, it's just a timing issue, but it's hope to get these orders in so we don't run into an issue where we don't have parts when we need them.
How is the treasurer hunt? I did not mean to make that
No.
sort of alliteration.
Mariah can chime in if she wants. However, we do have 2 very good candidates we're interviewing. I believe it's Thursday. We are very hopeful.
Yeah.
And unless council has any questions, we will bring forward the approval. We'll bring forward the purchase later.
I guess the only question I have, if they happen to come in, do we have the space to put them?
Yes,
Okay.
we've already discussed with Public Works.
Okay, yes.
Maybe one more point to add is getting these quotes and getting the costs locked in now might save us because what we're hearing from the vendors is things are going to get quite expensive. So trying to get ahead of things.
Good point, Glenn. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kyle.
Yep.
Okay, it's Paul's favorite part of the meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
One correction though, it's all of our favorite. We just like.
Well,
Paul.
Councilmember Glover jumps to it first.
Yeah.
Okay, we are adjourned as the city council. We do have an RDA agenda. Looks like we're taking a 2-minute to 5-minute break where I'm gonna eat the cupcakes that Dustin gave me for his birthday. Didn't know I was gonna need to invest in a whistle.
Shot callers.
It's 9:29, and I will call the redevelopment agency of Midvale City Board to order. Welcome to our two guests who have been so kind to sit throughout this the city council meeting. Rory, will you call the roll?
Yes. Board Member Brown,
Here.
Robinson. Here. Glover.
Here.
Gettle.
Here.
Sperry.
Okay, the public comments section of the meeting. This is the portion of the agenda. If there's anybody here that would like to make public comments to the RDA. Seeing none. Moving on to the consent agenda. Consider minutes of February 15th, 2022. Is there a motion to accept the consent agenda?
Mayor, I motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? Rory, will you call roll?
Yes, Board Member Gettle.
Yes.
Glover.
Aye.
Sperry.
Aye.
Robinson. Aye. And Brown.
Yes.
Okay, that passes. We've got one discussion item, discuss Sunset Gardens RDA affordable housing loan request. Maggie. Maggie, have you had an opportunity to meet our council members?
I have not.
Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, this is my third week here at Midvale City. I'm so happy to be here. New project manager for the RDA. I'd like to thank the mayor and council members for taking time to have a discussion with us tonight about this loan request for affordable housing. And first, I'd also like to thank IT for helping me today. I was getting set up for this meeting in sort of a roundabout way. So thank you for your patience. Yeah, let's get going. And also happy birthday, Bryant and Dustin.
Thank you.
Thanks. The cupcakes were just for Dustin, though, just for the record. They were not-
Okay.
I will never live that down.
No,
Just so we're clear. This has
In a
been
million years.
forever thing.
Although Bryant did have two of
to make up for it.
A few weeks ago, Brian said he and I have friends, so.
This is a normal RDA.
Welcome.
I feel a little bad.
Oh, here we go. Okay, so our discussion item tonight is an affordable housing loan request for the project Sunset Gardens. And I'll be reviewing that a little bit here to get you up to speed. The requesters are Chelsea Investment Corporation, who is the developer, and this is in partnership with Salt Lake County Housing Authority and Housing Connect, who's the owner of the project. And a quick project overview. Sunset Gardens was approved by City Council in 2020. It includes, are you seeing it up here?
Yeah.
Okay. It includes the demolition of 12 duplexes for a total of 24 households, 24 units, and it is now being replaced by a 3-story structure that will include 89 new units. And the project will exclusively house those 50 who are 50% AMI and below, with some deeper targeted areas, as you can see there. Current estimation for the cost is $19,400,000. Currently, they have support, funding support through LIHTC. Is that how you say that? Equity and the Olin Walker Housing Loan Fund. So the request is for a loan that they will be repaying for $1.7 million. And this is to finalize funding for the Sunset Gardens project to include local funding in addition to the federal and state funding that they've already secured. So the repayment plan would be at a 1.5% simple interest rate. And this would be in line with the Olin Walker Housing Loan Fund. And the proposed term is the construction period plus 50 years to coincide with the LIHTC extended use period. Just a quick visual overview. I don't know how long it's been since you've seen this project, but these are the this is the current state. So these are the 12 duplexes, and there's a bird's eye view and then a closer look at the buildings that were built in the 80s, and they're ready for renewal. And this is a quick snippet of what's going in the 3-story structure. So there's been quite a few community concerns that have been addressed through design and on-site management and oversight that will be taking place in the facility. So the lenders and investors and the project stakeholders, with the funding, a lot of them are providing, they're required to give more inspections and have more regular inspections and have more oversight. There's also going to be a permanent service coordinator on site. So they will be there to oversee and implement and just implement the needed services to for the facility, including ensuring that there's quiet hours after 10 p.m. because that was a community concern, was noise. There are also rooms available in the space for service providers to offer on-site client services, education, and training. So there's going to be a lot of people involved in the space. Additional concerns is was the lighting in the parking lot and fencing around the parking area. So included in the design, they're planting trees to not only offer shade, but to hopefully block some of that light from the neighborhood at night. And they've updated the fence plan and are restricting public access to the canal. There was also some concerns about the dumpsters. Currently, they're in a position out in the parking lot where there's smell issues, and there's a plan now for more frequent trash pickup 3 times a week plus shoots, and the dumpster is now closer to the building. So that is managed a little bit more efficiently now too. I wanted
Real
to
quick, before we move on from
go
the
ahead.
community concerns,
Mhm.
if I'm remembering correctly, wasn't there also some concerns on security and discussions about having some on-site security?
Yes, there are security cameras and a security system.
I thought,
Can you-
I mean, I know you weren't here, but I thought wasn't there discussion? Maybe I'm mixing up projects about having security officers.
I know we talked about it. I don't know what the final
Okay.
outcome.
Yeah,
Yes,
if you
please.
want to step forward.
Hi, everyone. I saw many of you when we did the permitting.
Can you
I'm-
just state your name?
I'm Janice Kimball. I'm the CEO for Housing Connect. And with this property, we will have full-time on-site management. We do have a contract with Salt Lake County Sheriffs where we do extra like community policing, but we don't have a plan to have on-site security.
So is that with the contract? I mean, do they just come and patrol every once in a while, or?
Yeah.
Or just as needed, they call?
They do extra community policing for us, and then if we're having an issue, they'll do extra patrolling.
Alright.
They currently work about 12 of our sites.
I also wanted to touch base a little bit about the alignment with our Midvale City Housing Plan that was adopted in 2019. This project aligns with our mixed income multi-unit developments in strategic locations. And it also aligns with our goal to focus programs on households making 80% AMI or less. And as I mentioned earlier, this project is targeted for 50% and lower, which as described in the plan is a major gap and one that we would have a difficult time closing. So adding these 89 units really aligns with our goals in the housing plan. So the RDA staff recommends that the board approve the requested loan for 1.7 million for the Sunset Gardens Affordable Housing Project. The agency has funds available to support this project, which again will be paid back. Currently, our budget for this fiscal year is about, let's see, 2.3 million. So we have it in the budget to support this project.
Which properties is this coming out of as far as the RDAs or for the funding?
Go ahead.
So the majority of our affordable housing funds are coming from Bingham Junction. It's about a $1.9 million allocation annually going forward for the next 15 years. And so we have a fund balance right now of 2.8 million just sitting there.
And as Maggie said, we have a budget of 2.2 to spend down this fiscal year. We've only spent 40,000. And so if we don't do anything, we're going to be about 5 million in our fund balance starting the next fiscal year. So we would like to spend some of that money down, support a really great project. This one adds an additional 65 affordable housing units to the city, to Salt Lake County, and especially targets that very low served income range of 50% AMI and lower.
How does the repayment work?
So the terms that they're requesting is 1.5% and a 50-year term after construction. Again, this is a discussion item, so we can discuss those terms if you're uncomfortable with them. That is the request that has been made. And we are the same priority as their Olin Walker Fund. So as they receive funding, as they receive rent payments, they would make payments back to the agency on the same par and the same level as the Olin Walker Fund.
I mean, is it, as they receive those funds, is it a set amount? If I remember correctly, when we did one of these before, it was something of, at the end of the year, you know, if you have X amount in your profit, or, you know, these communities don't really operate on profit loss, but it's kind of a, depending on how the year went and what you collected, then you're contributing something. It's not, you know, it's not a set amount that they have to contribute every year. It's based on their finances.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. That's the, I think it's senior living home with, that has affordable housing components into it.
So is this, would this be kind of a similar component to that, or is it, there's a minimum amount they have to pay back every year?
If Tim is online, he can address that question probably better than I can. Tim, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, everybody. This is Tim Baker with Chelsea Investment Corporation. We're the developer consultant for Housing Connect. And yes, what it's called is a net cash flow loan. So at the end of the calendar year, that payment will be made out of cash flow. And that is in line with Olin Walker funds also in that regard. And that at the maturity of the note, the full balance that remains will be paid off.
So when those funds come back, what happens to them? Do they go back into the housing?
Correct. They would be reinvested into housing initiatives.
On the 50% AMI, is that based on household?
Yes. So I believe 45% of the units are single
60 of the units are one bedroom.
Yeah, 60 of the units are one bedroom. And so that would be just a single person's AMI. And then as the unit was, you know, more bedrooms, the higher the rent would be based on household income, the size of your household.
So the rent is based on their income?
Correct.
I have another question. It's probably for Janice. It's more my curiosity going back to the discussion from last year or whenever we approved it. I know there was a lot of concern by current residents of being displaced, and there was a discussion. I mean, you don't want anybody to be homeless and trying to relocate them during this process. How has that worked? Are you still in the process of trying to relocate some of those individuals?
Actually, we've begun the process at the end of last year. We have, last I checked, we had about 7 residents who were left. All of them have been offered a Section 8 voucher, should they choose to use that. We also left other units open in public housing that they could transfer to. And we, to make sure that they had all the assistance they needed, we contracted with a relocation specialist. So they get help with like moving, hookups, finding places.
And do those people, if they want to come back, are they like, you know, they get the first option to come back into the community?
They'll get the first priority, yes.
Okay.
Any other questions for me?
I just
Thank
want to say thank you for doing that for our residents here in Midvale, because I know that was a big concern for people. It was like, you know, if you start knocking down buildings, you know, it's a very, very obvious concern. So thank you.
Sure, it was the right thing to do. So
And I think most of us up here generally, we think this is a great project. You know, actually, I'll speak for myself. I think this is a great project. I'm happy to support it. I think, you know, it's a drop in the bucket of that's the second time I've said that tonight, of the, you know, the affordable housing units we need in Midvale, and not to mention statewide. So this little bit that we can do is great.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate them following through with that commitment to, you know, help relocate these people, because we've all been here where developers or other people, service providers say, I'll do this, I'll do it. We can't bind them to it. And so to see it when they follow through, you know, it's always great. It says a lot about them. So we appreciate that.
Do you know the time frame when this would be completed and having the units ready for rent? or-
Tim Baker did. Yeah, go ahead, Tim.
We are hoping that we could close on the financing sometime this summer. Earlier is the better. We have a 15-month construction period. Housing Connect has selected Cure Construction from Salt Lake as the GC. And we are required, because of the LIHTC tax credits, we're required to have the building completed by December 31st of 2023. So we're looking at probably the third to fourth quarter of 2023 for completion. And with the high demand of affordable housing in the area, we have 3 months to lease up for our performa, but chances are pretty good we'll have it leased up within about a month or so. So come the first quarter of 2024, we will have a completed and fully occupied building and some type of, as long as the pandemic doesn't come back, some type of grand opening for the site, for the development, which would be terrific.
Are there any other questions or things that you'd like to discuss?
Does the one question is, we had to use these funds somewhere in the project area. We can use these outside the project area and they count towards what is
Correct.
required by the law.
Exactly. So funds that you've earmarked for affordable housing can be spent within the project area, without the project area, anywhere citywide. We could even decide we don't want this money and we'll kick it to the county or the Olean Walker Fund.
What, I mean, you already answered this, is once that loan's repaid, you know, it goes back into the housing fund, but what were some of the circumstances when you do this and then it comes back to the city that, you know, you don't have that restriction?
As far as utilizing them for affordable housing?
No, yeah, utilize, because then once, and you know, separate from this, but when we use it for permitted uses, but then once it comes back or it's paid, that we can then use it for whatever we want. What circumstances are those?
I'm not aware of that, but I can look into that and get back to you.
I think you still have to use it for housing.
I would say there probably none. I don't think there is a circumstance where you could do that.
I think the biggest part we were talking about is the funds being able to use them other places in the city, because it started out to me, we had to use them down in those project areas. And somehow in between, I don't know how, my understanding or whatever, now we can use them anywhere in the city. So
Yeah, that's correct.
I don't know exactly how that.
Yeah, it's been quite a while that the RDA code was changed, that you could use affordable housing funds anywhere within the
When we started this
city.
project,
Yeah, it may have
it
been.
was like, you have to use them in this project area.
Yeah, with housing is one of the few that you can do that outside, but yeah. But it's not a housing cleaning method, so there's not really any way to bring it back in and be able to use it for anything other than housing. Now, there's lots of creative ways you could use it for housing. We're doing that with some of the Main Street stuff and things like that. So, but yeah, gotta stay housing.
Any other questions or comments?
Then we will kind of finalize the agreement and then come back to you at the next RDA board meeting for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second by everyone.
All right. We're adjourned.
Yeah.